Good afternoon. 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? One. One, two, 1, 2. Testing, testing. Testing again. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Maybe a slightly lower, louder. Sorry. Testing again. Okay. Hello. I hope you can hear me now. Good afternoon. Much for I think the microphone, maybe I'm gonna try to find another one. Testing. Oh yes, much better. No. Good afternoon, everyone. A heartfelt welcome to our exciting events, shifting gears, navigating the roadblocks to accelerated renewable energy development in the Eastern Partnership. We are blessed with an exciting series of discussion today, and we hope as well we have the time to cover many of the questions we are planned to cover today. I wanted to mention that this event is rooted in an ongoing discussion at COP and beyond, with the energy landscape transforming rapidly. And region like the Eastern Partnership stands at a critical crossroads. The choice we're making today will determine whether the region harness its vast energy potential, renewable energy potential, or remain tethered to outdated energy system. And this event is a call to action. We'll begin by unveiling the findings of a crucial study on the region renewable energy outlook. And also, following this presentation, we have an expert panel dissecting the key challenges and opportunity and offering concrete solutions for accelerating the region energy transition. And before we start with that, we have a series of keynote intervention, starting with the Minister Sylviana Grunchek, the Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources of Ukraine, that prepared a video intervention.
Dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, greeting to all participants of the event. Today we have gathered to discuss the green energy transition and overcoming barriers to renewable energy integration. Successful integration of renewable energy sources is critically important for achieving energy independence and climate resilience in our countries. The Eastern Partnership countries have sustainable potential in renewable energy, including solar, wind, bioenergy, hydrogen, hydropower. However, we face technical, infrastructural, and political challenges that require consolidated attention. Additionally, regulatory and administrative barriers remain as serious challenges for green energy development in the region. We must streamline permitting procedures, create the special conditions for investors, and fair competition in the renewable energy sector. Despite the ongoing war, Ukraine continues its transition to renewable energy, setting ambitious climate goals and reducing its dependence on fossil fuels. The green energy transition also includes a fair transformation of all regions, creating new jobs and supporting workers in traditional sectors. Collaboration with the European partners and technology exchange are key to establishing a sustainable and independent energy system in our region. I call for united effort to achieve our shared goal of energy independence and sustainable green future. I thank you, colleagues. I hope that today's event will be very successful, and Slava Ukraini!
Thank you very much, Minister, for this intervention. And we'll now move to the keynote speech by Mr. Gert-Jan Koopman, the Director General of DG at the European Commission.
So good afternoon, dear colleagues, friends, friends of Ukraine, Ukrainian friends, and friends from the Eastern Partnership countries. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and to offer a few remarks at the start of this workshop. I think it's very important that we're here today at COP29 with an event which reflects our shared commitment to tackling climate change, which is one of the most pressing challenges of our time. And I am impressed with the minister who, of course, is living in a country that is under relentless attack, underlining, nevertheless, the importance of the green transition as a strategic orientation. So I would like to thank Ukraine for hosting this event. And I would also like to underline that its commitment to sustainability and decarbonization is not just an inspiring example of resilience for all of us, it is also an essential part of Ukraine's EU accession track. And therefore, the determination with which this is pursued is testament to the country's willingness to follow its European path. Now, it's also important that we look at this from the perspective of how the green transition can provide stronger resilience. And it is the most powerful tool in this sense to deal with energy insecurity and reaching our commitments under the Paris Agreement. So the reduction in the dependence on fossil fuels serves many different objectives, and that is why it remains so important. Of course, in the EU, the Green Deal and the Repower EU plan are the essential roadmaps to advance the energy transition and to deliver on our commitments. I should underline, therefore, that it should not come as a surprise to anyone here that the Green Deal and the green transition is actually also at the heart of our cooperation with partners in the Eastern neighborhood. And I want to underline that whatever happens in the wider world, whatever other nations do in terms of making policy choices, the EU is committed to work together on this transition to enhance energy security, to promote sustainable energy, and also to foster energy market reforms. And of course, the Energy Partnership region, your region, has a wealth of untapped renewable resources, from wind and solar to hydro and geothermal energy. And this means that whilst any transition is challenging, the potential to manage this responsibly and cost effectively in the Eastern Partnership region is actually very significant. And that means that we should collectively double down and deliver on it. This is also why we have partnered with IRENA to conduct a mapping exercise of this renewable energy potential and the contribution that it can make to meeting energy consumption in the region in the coming years. So we think this research is really important because it will highlight the opportunities for a clean energy transition. I've already underlined how important it is to increase not just energy generation capacities, but also to make sure that markets function well through the necessary reforms and regulatory alignments in conjunction with meeting the requirements of the EU acquis. Let me say a few words about investments in closing. We have always put a lot of emphasis on this as part of our comprehensive package of technical and financial assistance to our partners in the Eastern neighborhood. First, through our regional EU for Energy program, which, with the support of the energy community, the Council of European Energy Regulators, and the IEA, has, I think, provided you with valuable expertise in the field of energy policies. And secondly, through the use of our financial instruments under the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus, which has contributed to de-risking, levering financing, and lowering the costs for energy projects across the region. And this is ultimately critical because without investments, this objective, this vision cannot be realized. And we've seen success from the development of the Masaryk solar power plant in Armenia to the rehabilitation of the Nguri hydropower plant in Georgia, or the upcoming construction of the Suceava-Balti power line linking Moldova to Romania. So before I hand the floor back to Irena to present the preliminary findings of the study, let me just reiterate our firm commitment to supporting your energy transition and contributing to your resilience, your greening, and the integration of your energy systems, both regionally and with the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kopman, for this inspiring keynote speech. We'll now move to the, as mentioned, as the presentation of the early findings of the study that Irena delivered, commissioned by the European Commission. If you can go to the next slide, please. Again. Yes, and again. And again. Yes, thank you. So from our analysis, the region, we believe, stands today at a critical juncture. While we analyze that individual countries have made strides in renewable energy deployments, early on, we identify the need for a comprehensive regional approach to unlock the full potential of collaborative energy transition discussion. The study, commissioned by the European Commission and undertaken by Irena, marks the first comprehensive assessment of the region renewable energy landscape. And we aim to move beyond individual country analysis, providing a cohesive regional perspective, identifying synergies between countries and opportunity for cross-border collaboration. Our methodology is rooted in analyzing two distinct scenarios, the planned energy scenario and a 1.5C aligned scenario, very important for the COP discussion. And this across two time horizons, the short to midterm 2030 and 2050, the horizon for the net zero targets. This study aimed to provide policymakers with a robust evidence for informed decision-making. Next slide, please. Our analysis of the final energy consumption of FEC, next slide, sorry, reveal a concerning trend, a slow and inefficient shift toward decarbonization under the current plan in the region. While fossil fuel is projected to decrease slightly by 2050, the projected 11% share of renewable in the final energy consumption by that year, up for a mere 6% today. This underscored the need for a dramatic acceleration of renewable energy deployments. And the modest increase in the power share, coupled with the dominance of Ukraine in regional energy consumption, highlight the importance of targeted intervention and regional cooperation. Next slide, please. Examining the final energy consumption through sectoral lens, so across power, building, industry, and transport, reveal critical area for intervention. The building and industrial sectors, as the dominant energy consumer, present the greatest opportunity for change. While the decline in industrial activity in Ukraine following 2022 temporarily reduced overall consumption, projected future growth require a proactive approach to decarbonization. Simply put, increasing renewable energy deployment is not enough. We must actively promote energy efficiency and electrification within the hard-to-abate sectors. And this requires not only technological advancement, but also collaboration on a regional basis on best practices, knowledge sharing, and coordinated policy framework. Next slide, please. Again. Sophisticated power system modeling form the backbone of our analysis, providing a robust, data-driven foundation for exploring future energy pathways. Our model simulates capacity expansion, operational dispatch of energy, and regional interconnection, allowing us to assess the implication of different scenarios and also different policy choices. We're also examining sensitivity around key variables like fuel prices, renewable resource variability, technology cost over time, and specific policy intervention. Next slide, please. The region from the study, from these preliminary findings, we found that is blessed with abundant renewable energy sources. However, this potential today is largely untapped. Our projection toward 2030 and 2050 show a substantial increase in power demand in the coming decades, underscoring the urgency of accelerating renewable energy deployments. In that sense, strategic investments in infrastructure tailored to each country resource endowment is crucial for meeting this growing demand, while at the same time, it was mentioned before, reducing the reliance on fossil fuel. Next slide, please. The planned energy scenario, the baseline of our study, while showing some progress in renewable energy integration, ultimately falls short of what is needed. The projected 32% share of renewables in power generation by 2050, while positive, highlight the need for more ambitious targets and accelerated implementation for each country plans. The decarbonized energy scenario, so the increased ambition scenario IRENA developed, provide a roadmap for deeper decarbonization to aggressive electrification and renewable energy deployments. Recognizing the unique characteristic of each Eastern Partnership country energy system is therefore crucial to tailor strategy and maximizing regional benefits. Next slide, please. Solar PV, as expected, and wind power emerge as the key technological driver of the region energy transition. The declining cost of solar PV, combined with the abundant solar resources across the region, make it a highly attractive option for both large-scale and distributed generation. Similarly, wind power offers a significant potential, particularly in both coastal and mountainous areas, providing a severe or significant cost-competitive and scalable solution for deployments. However, integrating those variable energy sources effectively require more investment in grid modernization, including enhanced transmission capacity and smart grid technology. Furthermore, a topic of importance at COP29, there is a need to expand energy storage capacity, which is crucial for mitigating the intermittent nature of solar and wind and ensuring ultimately the grid reliability. Regional cooperation on green infrastructure development and management also can further optimize the resource and also reducing overall costs. Next slide, please. To conclude, the essentially IRENA analysis commissioned by your commission compare the current scenario, the trajectory to around 2030, 2050 under current plan, and propose a decarbonized energy scenario, or DES, with a vision of a truly sustainable future in the region. It outlines a holistic, multi-stakeholder approach that goes beyond simply increasing renewable energy generation. In the transport sector, the DES advocates for a complete shift toward electric vehicle, increased biofuel blending, and modal shift toward rail, and the exploration of alternative fuel for aviation and shipping. Within the industrial sector, the DES promote energy efficiency improvements and the electrification of industrial processes and the adoption of more green hydrogen. For buildings, the focus is on electrifying heating systems, improving energy efficiencies through building retrofits and reducing the overall demand. Lastly, in the power sector, the DES call for an accelerated deployment of renewable technologies with streamlined permitting, enhancing regional grid integration for improved energy security, and increasing the resilience of the grid through investment in the energy storage, demand side, and the grid system. So this finding, those preliminary findings provide for today a platform for discussion and exchanging point of view on how to accelerate the transition of the region. I'd like now to move to the panel discussion. I'm the presenter and the moderator today. As I've just explored in the presentation, we need to more effort and we need collaboration to significantly reduce the roadblocks to achieve this decarbonized energy scenario. The panel discussion is a direct continuation of this conversation, bringing key stakeholders to delve deep into the challenges and opportunity we've identified. We'll have panelists from government, finance, industry, and the overall renewable energy sector. Let's leverage this expertise to dissect the regulatory bottlenecks, the investment gaps, and the underground challenges hindering progress. I'd like now to invite the esteemed panel to the stand. I would like to start with Monica Figash, senior expert at the energy community. Welcome, Monica. Mr. Oleg Bondarenko, MP, head of the Verkhovna Rada Committee for Environmental Policy and Natural Management. Mr. Dimitri Grindaje, Director Climate Strategy and Regional Delivery at EBRD. Mr. Maxim Timchenko, the CEO of DTEC. Mr. Phil Cole, the Director of Industrial Affairs in Europe. And I see we're missing a chair. Yes, if a colleague can help me. And last but not least, Ms. Valbora Hemsberger, the CEO of Solar Power Europe. While we arrange the seating, Monica, I'd like to start with you, if you allow me. You must have a microphone, yes, with your colleague. Monica, to break the molds, regulatory frameworks are often cited as a major hurdle. Can you explain us how the energy community assess the current readiness of the region in terms of regulation around renewables? What are the typical key bottlenecks? And what are the legal reforms that you see as most critical?
Yeah, thank you, Simon, and thank you very much for an invitation of this panel. I see you were tough with me. I'm on the edge here in so many ways. So thanks a lot. And renewable energy is something that we're heavily focusing on, and it's actually in the core of our activities. And of course, legislation and regulatory frameworks is something that we are eyeing very closely. Overall, energy community contracting parties are actively establishing the regulatory frameworks. However,
Monica, you need to speak closer to the microphone.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. I hope it's better. However, there are still some challenges. There are still challenges with primary legislation, which has not been transposed fully in all of the Eastern Partnership countries. Some of them have, though, transposed it to a larger extent, but some to a lesser extent. However, this is only the backbone. There is still, unfortunately, some backsliding with when it comes to secondary legislation. This is equally as important because when you're telling a story, you have to tell it to the very end. And without secondary legislation, you will not have the actual development of renewable energy as you like to see. And this concerns more specifically secondary legislation for the frameworks for permitting, auctions, or grid modernization. But even if they exist also on paper, you actually have to follow up with the last step, implementation. So this is something that we still need to see progress on. There is, but it's just not to a sufficient extent. But I can also often offer some recommendations and solutions, but I'm in your hands, whether you'd like to hear them out loud.
Thank you. No, well, I mean, I propose that we have a deep dive question for you after, and I think that would be an excellent segue for your introductory remarks there. Thank you so much, Monica. I'll now move to Phil from Wind Europe. Phil, where do you see the greatest potential for wind development in the region? How can European wind industry contribute, and what are the advantages that it brings to the discussion?
We go.
1, 2, 1.
Thank you. Hello. Here we are. So number one, thank you for the question. Secondly, thank you very much for the invitation. It'd be very difficult for me to say which individual countries I think have the best opportunity. But the way I will probably word the answer to you, Simon, is that the countries that learn from the mistakes that more developed renewable energy markets have made in the past and then don't repeat them will be the ones who ultimately succeed in their renewable energy goals. So I think every country in the Eastern Partnership has a plethora of opportunities, but also challenges that they have to overcome. So making sure that every country is looking at their overall potential. I think there was an excellent slide there you put on showing the potential for renewables in different countries and the opportunity to go after. Certainly one of the ways that will help the rollout of renewables in these countries will be to look at permitting processes, so ensuring that we have shorter timelines as much as possible, and in many cases where it is possible to digitalize the permitting process. So still in developed renewable energy markets today, we are still using paper-based processes, which is crazy to me. I've seen many cases over my many years now at Wind Europe where permitting projects for both large and small wind farms get delayed because the paperwork gets lost in the post. There's a lot of expense and cost involved in printing the material. So let's see very quickly how we can digitalize that process and just frankly speed things up. It'll be important for each country to look at the amount of civil servant allocation they have, the amount of people they have looking at permitting applications. So even in developed markets in Western Europe for renewables, there just aren't enough people processing the permitting applications. It's as simple as a head count issue. So that will certainly help. I would then look at forward planning as well. So the supply chain in Europe is ready to support and to deliver the wind turbines and wider components that the Eastern Partnership countries need. But of course, they need to be able to ramp up and get ready for this to come along the line. Looking at bankable and realizable projects is going to be really key here. They are ready. So in Europe today, at the end of next year, the end of 2025, we will have 32 gigawatts of wind energy turbine manufacturing capacity. Under a piece of legislation through the EU called the Net Zero Industry Act, this asks for 36 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity by 2030. So there will be no problem in being able to supply the components from Europe. And I think that's really key for the wind energy side going forward. So that's probably how I would leave the question there. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. I have for later a question about what the industry needs on support, but we can come later. Valborga, we move to solar, obviously a giant in the transition in Europe. This region, the Eastern Partnership region, has abundant solar resource, but the solar deployment, according to our study, the deployment lags. Does solar have a bright future in the region? And how can we collectively accelerate its growth? Is it big projects or consumer level installation? Can you give us some keys on how to unlock the solar potential in this region?
I mean, thanks for the question, first of all, and thanks for the invitation. I do think that, the answer to your question is it can have a bright future because indeed, as you mentioned, the solar potential is huge and it's, roughly the same in all the countries of the Eastern Partnership. What we see at the moment is, and then what you showed as well in your slides, is that the Ukraine and Azerbaijan are forging ahead because there's also, apart from the huge potential, there is also some supportive measures that are taken. By the way, one of the main things is, and this is why I'm so grateful for, the cooperation of the European Commission together with IRENA, is really the partnership. So we cannot, run this transition everyone on its own, but it is something that we need to do together. And in particular, the Eastern Partnership should be strengthened to tap into the potential. Now, solar, indeed, also according to the International Energy Agency, will be the main electricity source going forward. Now it's up to, every region, because the potential is there everywhere globally, how to tap into it. First of all, it will be important to have ambitious goals. And this is something that, is it depends on the political will. But it is very important because all the measures that you have been mentioning, are a follow-up to it. And you have to have these goals, and then you have to follow through up until, and this is what we still see missing in some countries, up until then also clear auction timelines, enabling PPAs, and these kind of tools, which make that the potential is then also turn into reality. Market certainty plays for sure a very important role. But then also grid development, and that is something where countries of the Eastern Partnership can kind of leapfrog the developments, where we have major challenges coming up in many regions, to make sure that it's investing in grids, but also in storage. So, the policies need to include also storage targets. For solar, that means a lot of batteries that need to deploy it, because it's, the solar system is really solar plus batteries, and all the measures that are helping, when it comes to auctions or allowing for revenue stacking for storage. These are the kind of market frameworks that can be built now, and that can help the solar deployment. And permitting, I'm not going to mention, because you deep dived into that as well already, Phil.
Thank you so much. Exciting landscape. I think be ready for the second question on maybe a few concrete actions you'd like to be in the summary of the event, to really put forward, let's say, the element for accelerating the deployment here. Thank you so much. Maxime, from DTEC perspective, what are the biggest obstacles, but maybe also opportunities for renewable energy in Ukraine's current geopolitical context? How can renewables help to keep the lights on this winter, and what roles they play in DTEC long-term strategy?
Thank you for inviting and for asking this question. So I'm very pleased to see potential of Ukraine in Eastern Partnership. So, and this potential is realized by 1 to 3% in solar and wind. And answering your question, of course, the big obstacle is war in Ukraine. It's very, very obvious. We cannot expect huge volume of investments coming to Ukraine for security reasons. But from the other side, this war in Ukraine accelerated energy transition in our country. And that's irony of this war, that we realize that solar, wind, battery storage, all these technologies is not only about climate change. It's not only about decarbonization. It's about energy security. It's about how to build generation facilities in a way that it's more difficult to be attacked by Russians. This is what in our agenda, and this what is driving force to deploy more capital and build more distributed generation in Ukraine. And of course, the DTEC is the largest private energy company. We're on the ground. We keep building new projects in wind and battery storage, and we'll continue that. And this is our focus for the reason I just said. And also what is important, that this potential, what you just showed us, we need to explore not only for Ukraine, but for European Union and for our neighbors and for our countries. And as President Zelensky said, Ukraine have everything to become a green powerhouse for European Union. And the fact that our power grids united now, we expanding transborder capacity and building more distributed renewable generation in the country, that will be our contribution to energy security of the whole continent. And of course, this is part of our agenda. This is what we are doing now.
Thank you so much. I mean, excellent. At the end, you mentioned decentralized system. Maybe I'll ask a deep question later on. Thank you so much. Coming back to Oleg, Ukraine reconstructions presents similarly opportunities there. How central actually are renewables from a parliamentary point of view to Ukraine recovery? What are the supports today that is needed, and what steps the parliament has taken to accelerate its development?
Good day, dear colleagues. Thank you for invitation for this panel, but let me speak in Ukrainian, and I need a little help of my colleague. Could you give him a second one microphone? Дякую. Шановні колеги, певно, всі присутні знають, що шлях альтернативної або зеленої, або відновлювальної енергетики в Україні є доволі довгим.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We all know that the path of renewable energy in Ukraine. Could you hear me on the back? Okay, perfect. Path. All right, I'll come here. So, path of renewable energy, long and not easy.
Насправді закон про альтернативні джерела енергії був прийнятий у 2003 році.
A law of legislation for renewable ratified in 2003.
І з того часу в нашій країні створилося доволі багато об'єктів відновлювальної енергії в сфері водної енергетики, сонячної енергетики, вітрової енергетики, енергетики з біомаси та інше.
Since then, we had multiple projects on wind, solar, and also biofuel energy in Ukraine.
Але давайте скажемо відверто, чи на протязі всіх цих років альтернативна енергетика була пріоритетною для нашої країни? Скоріш ні.
But let us speak frankly, was the renewable energy priority in our countries throughout these years? Well, the answer is no.
Так, до альтернативної енергетики було різне відношення. Певний період часу застосовувалися стимулюючі фінансові механізми, надавалися певні пільги. Але останні 5-7 років альтернативна енергетика була в занепаді.
Towards alternative sources of energy, the attitude and atmosphere around varied throughout the recent years. However, within the last 5-7 years, it went down.
Накопичилися величезні борги перед підприємствами, які утворюють електроенергію. Накопичилися проблеми з постачанням фінансових ресурсів. На жаль, певні інвестори почали виходити з ринку.
Unfortunately, the alternative source of energy accumulated significant debt. There were issues with financial sources, and some major investors started to exit.
Але станом на зараз, певно, в жодній країні Європи саме створення альтернативної енергетики, відновлювальної енергетики, розподіленої генерації не є настільки важливим, як в Україні.
However, today, in no other country in Europe, creation of alternative sources of energy as important as today in Ukraine.
Станом на зараз майже вся потужна енергетика з Східної України зруйнована.
As of today, nearly all energy sources of Eastern Europe destroyed.
Особливо яскраво це сприймається і відчувається моїм рідним Харковом, Харківською областю, тими областями, які межують з Харківською областю.
Especially painful is for the Kharkiv region, my dear Kharkiv region, which was exposed to significant damages.
І саме станом на зараз питання відновлення енергетики і відновлення саме альтернативної енергетики або розподіленої генерації стоїть на перших шпальтах нашої країни.
Reconstruction of alternative sources of energy today is our topmost priority.
Ми маємо від парламенту, від уряду, від держави створити якомога швидше стимули, наступні стимули для створення такої розподіленої генерації, для створення альтернативної енергетики.
From our parliament, we have lots of incentives to create alternative sources of energy.
Ми розуміємо, що в нас немає іншого шляху, окрім зменшення використання традиційної енергетики, зменшення використання видобувного палива і, відповідно, зменшення викидів парникових газів.
We understand that we have no other path besides decreasing the use of traditional sources of energy and stop relying on fossil fuels.
Відповідно, всі ті програмні закони, документи, які ми приймаємо, зокрема закон про основні засади державної кліматичної політики, передбачають перехід до кліматичної нейтральності України до 2050 року і зменшення використання видобувного палива.
Numerous laws that are meant to decrease use of fossil fuels, specifically the path to neutrality until 2050, are meant to be on this path.
Але цього замало. Нам потрібна чітка стратегія нашої країни по припиненню будівництва нових потужностей енергетики на базі викопного палива. Нам потрібна чітка стратегія щодо поступового закриття вже застарілих енергогенеруючих та теплогенеруючих потужностей і перехід все більше і більше до альтернативної енергетики.
However, this isn't enough. We need a robust strategy to stop use of fossil fuels. We need a robust strategy to close energy and heat generation facilities that are relying on fossil fuels.
Верховна Рада України, парламент дає належну рамку для цього. Зокрема, знову ж таки, ми нещодавно прийняли закон про інтегрований довкіловий дозвіл, яким передбачається перехід енергетики в тому рахунку на найкращі доступні технології.
Recently, Ukrainian parliament ratified the legislation of using the best possible sources of alternative energy.
Best available technologies. Але це роки, це величезні інвестиції. І в цьому ми сподіваємося на підтримку наших друзів, Європейського Союзу, партнерів, інвесторів. Ми готові до прийняття.
However, it will all take years, and we all hope and rely on support of our friends, our partners, and on further collaboration.
Thank you very much also for facilitating the I have also continuing with Dimitri. We are here in Baku on a COP focusing heavily on climate finance. From obviously the intervention before, what are the key discussions from EBRD perspective that are more relevant for the region? And how is EBRD supporting the green transition in the region, and maybe particularly from the intervention before in Ukraine?
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? I want to start by expressing deep respect to our friends from Ukraine, you know, and your resilience, your strengths are very important. You know, they're very important not only for your country but for the entire region, because we're discussing the Eastern Partnership. You know, what happens in Ukraine has very significant implications for the entire region. So, significant accolades and kudos to you guys. Second, on the climate finance. Yes, this is a climate finance COP. So the bulk of the discussion is centered around the new collective quantified goal. I mean, the multilateral development banks, and I represent the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. A couple of days ago, made a statement about the increase of the volume of the climate finance from 125 to 270 million. Then also the increase in the mobilized private mobilization, which is also very important. From 100 to 230 million by the end of this decade. This is all very important, but this is one of the sides of the climate finance equation. This is the supply of the climate finance. What about the uptake for the climate finance, the demand? And demand of the climate finance, it depends on many factors. You know, the macroeconomic stability, the exchange rate stability. It depends on small things like licensing, like the land acquisition rights, like the speed of the government decision-making, the quality of the public institutions, and so on and so forth, you know. And we, the multilateral development banks, on top of providing the climate finance, we're also trying to help the governments where we operate to unblock those constraints. On Ukraine, we since the start of the second round of the war against Ukraine, you know, by Russia in like 3 years ago almost, we provided 5 billion euros of funding. Roughly 90% of the projects that we have done have been in the private sector, and in terms of the volumes of transactions, 45% of the finance we provided to Ukraine in the last 2.5, 3 years have been in the public sector, and 55% in the private sector. And we, I mean, by virtue of our mandate, the bulk of what we do is in the private sector. Ukraine is a very special country for us. I mean, we went through the capital increase, and the work in Ukraine and the support to Ukraine was at the core of the capital increase discussions, and we're ready to continue beefing up that cooperation in both public and private sector. In the financial sector, industry, commerce, agriculture, sustainable infrastructure, you know, those are the areas where we've got the established relationship with our Ukrainian friends and counterparts. I mean, one of the programs that we're working on, and we recently launched, is the emergency energy security facility, and this is a 700 million euro program which we're implementing through the participating financial institutions, through the commercial banks, and we're doing that for the energy generation, for the energy storage, and the energy efficiency. And we're also reaching out to the big corporates, you know, to support them, you know, to withstand the pressure of times, you know, and withstand the very significant pressure which is coming from the big macroeconomic challenges also. You know, I started in the EBRD as lead economist for East Europe and Caucasus, and I was Kiev based. And I remember the first time when the Russians invaded Donbass, 25% of the exports of Ukraine and 70% of the GDP. On the back of the first round of the invasion, there was a 60% depreciation of the currency. If you compare the output of production of Ukraine today to what it was in 2013, you know, the last peaceful year, now it is 30% lower than a decade ago. The currency kept depreciating, so the exchange rates were significant, you know. So there are significant political risks, there are significant macroeconomic risks, and I agree with you that the national security context is one of the key ingredients, you know, in that equation which makes the projects bankable. And we're ready to basically support the country every step of the way. This is at the core of what we're doing. And as I said, what happens in Ukraine will be shaping and defining the future of the Eastern Partnership region.
Thank you, Dimitri. I'd like to ask. Oh, yes, I'm back. I have questions based on your intervention. Dimitri, I will start with you directly, and we go back to Monica at the end. Obviously, you mentioned the climate between also the discussion at COP regarding the new climate quantified financial goal there. The discussions are very tense. How can the multilateral community, so the development bank like EBRD, bridge this gap? Here, practically providing support to de-risk renewable energy investment in the region, and also what are the role of the EU in that discussion?
Yeah, the climate investment gap is in excess of $2 trillion, and you probably saw a few high-level expert reports, you know, which basically point in this direction. For us, we look at it as a $1 trillion climate investment opportunity. We look at it as a climate investment opportunity, you know, because if you look at the learning curves for the wind energy, for the solar energy, many of the products which had been niche products 10 years ago, they've gone mainstream, and those are time-tested, commercially viable propositions. And you can structure commercially viable project finance transactions. And that's basically the bulk of what we do. As I said, we work mainly in the private sector, and we engage with the commercial banks, with the real sector companies. What we can do, we can provide the combination of the finance, and this is a long-term finance, also the local currency finance, and we can provide plenty of policy dialogue, technical assistance, capacity building. In Ukraine, we use the funded and unfunded guarantees, the credit enhancement instruments. We are using the investment incentives and the technical assistance grants. So this is a full gamut of the products and instruments, which basically helps to get things done in otherwise challenging circumstances very often.
Thank you very much. You can. I'm gonna try to work out a mic. Oleg, you mentioned also the need to significant investment in rebuilding Ukraine's energy infrastructure. From this discussion, how, in your perspective, can we attract more international investors and mitigate the perceived risk of entering Ukraine and investing in energy there? And I call Dima for the translation.
Так, станом на зараз це одне з найскладніших питань в нашій країні. Звісно, не потрібно нагадувати, що наша країна знаходиться в складному стані війни, яка, сподіваюся, закінчиться справедливим миром на протязі найближчого періоду.
Well, as of today, we are in a hard situation, and we will hope that our country will conclude in a peaceful solution.
Але питання захисту прав інвесторів і залучення інвесторів все одне стоїть на порядку денному нашої країни і має розглядатися і створюватися всі необхідні стимули для цієї діяльності.
As to protecting the rights of investors, this is among the top of our priorities, and we should look on any possibilities to work on it.
Ми розробляємо станом на зараз законодавство в Верховній Раді України, в парламенті України, які будуть стимулювати такий необхідний розвиток альтернативної енергетики. І сподіваюся, що невдовзі ми зможемо започаткувати такі можливості.
We are working on a legislation that will incentivize the development of alternative sources of energy.
Thank you so much. You make a great team. So thank you so much for the comments. Coming back to Maxime, you mentioned the benefit of decentralized energy system, which are getting tractions. What are the key factors that will drive the development in Ukraine? And also what are the needed financial and also policy changes that are needed to support the shift to more decentralized energy systems?
So I think that it's national consensus that we need to build more decentralized generation, and it's reflected in policy of our government, and we very much welcome new auctions coming, capacity market auctions, and the first one we have in August for battery storage. We hope that next capacity auction will come for gas flexible capacity in first quarter next year. And we see that more than 15 companies participated in this auction. So it's good sign that we make changes in legislation that allow us to build more decentralized generation, to build proper offtake structure, and in general make this project bankable. That's why the tech is participated in auction for battery storage, and we ready to deliver by next year, October next year, new facility. And also we'll be participating in gas flexibility auctions to be run in February, March next year. So, but the main obstacle, as it was already said, is access to capital. So definitely today Ukraine is in situation that we cannot consider traditional commercial funding of our projects. And that's why we very much appreciate it to, first of all, European Union, European Commission, international financial institutions, our colleagues from US government, because we only can get funding now through different structures, participation of governments and international financial institutions. And it allows us to keep investing. So I think we have to be creative in bringing different financial structures to support, because as already said in other discussion, we have companies, we're ready to invest, we know how to build under current conditions, and we're ready to continue to take our risk, but we need support through financial organizations to continue.
Thank you so much. That's a great recommendation also on the need for more collaboration. Valvorma, you are the voice, the brain, the face of the solar industry. What are the concrete actions are needed to really jumpstart and accelerate the solar energy deployment in the region? What are the typical or biggest roadblocks today the industry face to achieve this objective?
Maybe following up from your comments on decentralization. So indeed, the right infrastructure to decentralize is extremely important. Maybe also answering one of the questions I didn't answer from your previous round is, what kind of segments we need to look into. So we need to look into all segments. I think it is important to look at utility scale solar, but also looking at rooftop solar, commercial industrial solar developments. Maybe also interesting for countries like the Ukraine, where agriculture plays a very important role, is the combination of solar production and agricultural production, which has a very, very important, which has very important benefits, not just on the revenue side, but also on water use and so on and so forth. So that is one point. Maybe I should also add that we're very proud that we were very concretely involved in some of the projects and the decentralized projects. The Charkiv hospital, one of the Charkiv hospitals, for example, where we installed solar systems, and schools and other hospitals as well, which I do think is very important to keep on the lights in these kind of infrastructures. The second point is, which I made already, is that when we talk about infrastructure, it's about grids, but it's also very much about storage. So there it is important to have incentives for the uptake of storage, whether that's in auctions, whether that is incentives when it comes to revenue generation, so that storage assets can provide services to the grid, they can also be trading the different capacities on wholesale markets and so on and so forth. So storage is another big topic. And then one last one, which is skills. In Europe, we need some 1 million workers in 2 years' time for the energy transition for solar in particular. But that is not different in other countries. So you need the right skills in order to build up the industry and to deploy further at big scale. And maybe one last thing, because finance has been mentioned sufficiently already. One last thing is that cooperation in the end is extremely important. We can all learn from each other. There is some very nice best practices that we can share, and we can build on each other's experience.
Thank you very much. Phil, IRENA study shows the need to diversify renewable energy sources. In the past, wind has received intermittent support. Here is there, is not there, is there, is not there. What are the key barriers today to massively deploy wind power in the region? And what's from Wind Europe, what are the industry players are saying on what are the support needed to overcome the challenges in the region?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It doesn't like me. I don't know what's going on. Let's go with this one. There we go. So lots of similar topics from what Valberga has said, but maybe to add a few extra. We are already installing wind energy in Eastern Partnership countries and particularly in Ukraine, and we will certainly continue to do that. So we look forward to sort of seeing those clear project plans continue to be developed. Decentralized grid obviously makes a lot of sense in this situation, perhaps taking a tiered approach to the grid system. So a central plan, a microgrid plan, and then essentially an off-grid plan for the key critical infrastructure will be very important. As we start to see the rollout of larger volumes of renewables, very much looking again at ensuring we have clear frameworks on public-private financing. The European Investment Bank has been supporting European manufacturers of wind technology by a counter-guarantee program. So I think looking at counter-guarantees and guarantees for the region will certainly be very important. And we should get ahead of this now rather than asking for this or developing this in X years' time, where it basically slows down the deployment of renewables. I think as well, looking at how we can sort of look at the business models and basically ensure that manufacturers and developers continue to install in the region is going to be very important. The need to look at how we develop these interconnector plans is also going to be key. The region has ample opportunity to not only sort of develop renewables for its own use, but also for supply to other regions around Europe and beyond. So I think there's an excellent opportunity there. And if I was to say probably one more thing, I would really ask for, and the industry is asking for, very clear and stable regulatory frameworks. Once you know the framework and the auction models, for example, that we have to work with, as long as they don't change, the industry can continue to work with those and develop the business models that support the continued rollout. So I just say regulatory certainty is probably the most important thing, and support will obviously continue to develop in the region. Yeah.
Thank you, Phil. So stability is needed. That's a great also icon. Monica, you're the climate guru. Can I say that?
I can end on stability, and actually picking up on Phil's last point on regulatory frameworks. Actually, something remarkable happened in the last 12 months in all three countries. But we need to zoom out of the renewable energy sector, because all three countries set a vision for 2050 climate neutrality. Georgia has done so in its long-term strategy. Moldova and Ukraine have just set the target in law. So actually, this is really one of the, I think, strongest pushes for the development of renewables, setting a vision for decades and committing to it. So this is something that sets the context, but it's a very strong signal for renewables.
Take my turn. Yes. Working. I'm going to take. Should be working. Yes. I think we're almost running out of time. I think there was a colleague from Moldova. You wanted maybe to share a perspective from Moldova, let's say, transition as well there?
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you here, all of you. I'm Nikolai from the Ministry of Energy, Republic of Moldova, head of Renewable Energy Department. And indeed, I just agree with all which was said before me. Indeed, yeah, and first of all, I want to thank Ukraine for keeping Moldova safe, because indeed, as you mentioned about if Ukraine fails, Moldova and other countries also will fail. Moldova was also quite, or it's even now quite energy dependent of import sources. But the crisis, the start of war, was a catalyst for starting investments in the renewable energy sector in Moldova. And in past 3 years, our installed capacities in renewables tripled. And yeah, I would like to mention the great results that we had on distributed generation, like net metering programs or net metering mechanism, which was a huge success. Such a big success that we had to think what to do next about this to somehow give access to other people which are willing to invest in renewables, but also not to put a burden to the grid operators. Yeah, so we are switching now to the net billing mechanism. It's another mechanism, a great one, but quite a bit different in terms of investment recoverability. We have auctions for renewables started this August, and the term for applying to invest, it's until 31st of March 2025. And we plan to further develop this segment, but to have wind zones or selected areas where people, investors can come and be investors in that high potential wind areas, where also the grid will be ready for implementing these projects. Yeah, thank you. There is a lot to discuss about this, and yeah, the time is short, but we are looking to cooperate together with the Eastern Partnership countries to switch or to move towards net zero by 2050.
Thank you, Nikolai. I think that's a call to action of collaboration, also hearing a different voice in the region. I'd like to thank the Minister, Mr. Gert-Jan Koopman, for the opening interventions. Thank you very much, dear panelists. I think we explore the intricacy of regulation, mobilizing crucial financing, and also looking at on-the-ground challenging solutions here today. The key takeaway is, I think, the need for collaboration, regional cooperation between governments, between international financial institutions, and also partnership between the public and the private sector to really mobilize, let's say, the solutions that are today available to transition the region towards renewable energy. Thank you all for being part of this important conversation.